Hi everyone, it's Heidi from Flutter by Heidi, and today I'm video hopping with the Stamp Around UK crew, and our theme or our challenge that we were given was embossing. So I couldn't resist using this beautiful new embossing folder, which is a lovely snowflake design, which you probably can't see terribly well there, but maybe you can see a little bit more on this card, which you can see here, which has got embossing, but I'm not even doing that one. That is a project for another day. But today I'm doing this, which is a pretty Lumiere, which you can see I've got a little LED tea light in there which changes colour, and I've used beautiful Stampin' Up vellum, which is so thick it works wonderfully with embossing. I'm going to do a slight variation on this today, which I think works even better, and you can see I've used these so many snowflakes dies on this and beautiful balmy blue glimmer paper, and you can see here these dies are amazing. You've got all these lovely big snowflakes. I've just used one of them. You've also got, which is kind of part of the inspiration, is this lovely aperture here, which is the same as the stitched shape framelit, but this is designed to create an aperture, but it was a little bit big for what I wanted to do. You can see here, so I'm going to be using that for another project, but I'm using the stitched nested labels, which are these ones here. Absolutely fantastic. These are the ones that I haven't used because I've used 3 different sizes. So I've used this one here and these 2 here that you can see. So what I've done is to create this. It's really straightforward, but perfect for going on your mantelpiece or a shelf, just a little bit of fun. So I've used the largest and the next size down, and then I've used the other size here, and you can see I've positioned it to one end, and I have deliberately used some washi tape so that I get the same placement on every single one. So in order to create our project, what you need to do is die cut 4 of these shapes, and obviously keep your stitched nested label from the middle, because that'll be useful for another project. As you can see here, that's going to go straight into my little pouch for future use. Lots of you will have seen me, will have heard me tell you this in the past. It's a really useful way. Just use these clear plastic CD folders, or you could use a cello envelope that you use to put your cards in. And every time I do some die cutting, I die cut a few extra, particularly of these shapes, so that I've always got some in my DVD case with my labels, as you can see here. So they just sit in there ready to use if I want to make a quick card. And the other thing I do with certain labels like these is I actually write on the dimensions as well. So you can see here that, you know, I've just die cut out one of each, and I've put on what the dimensions are as well, and what number one it is, so I can easily sort of see that, you know, for this one, you know, which one it is that I've used. So this is my very biggest one. I then have cut, as well as 4 frames, I've then cut some vellum. So I've used that other size that I had a moment ago to cut my vellum shapes. There we go. So I've cut out 4 vellum shapes, and I've cut out the frames. So as I said, when you do the frames, just pop it through your die cutting machine, and I've used washi tape, so you can use low tack tape as well, but whichever it is, just make sure you keep them it's the same. And the reason I have done it like this is that I've got an even border around the side and the top, and that is then going to give me enough space to score across the bottom to create our shapes. So there we go. So those are the shapes I've used. So the largest and the next size is number 8, number 7, and then I think it's my number 5. So I number them in order, in descending order from the largest to the smallest. So smallest number means smallest size of die. Okay. So yeah, as I've said, I've used oh no, I haven't used number 6. I used number 7. So I've used number 7 for vellum, Yeah, I've used number 8 and number 5, I think it is. Let me just double check that. 8 and 5. So I've used the largest and number 5 die for the aperture. So hopefully that should help you identify which ones they are in your set. So I can pop those to one side. Look, those can all go away because I've done the die cutting in advance. So all you're going to do is sandwich those up with a piece of Night of Navy, put it together, and what I'm going to do slightly differently on this is, rather than just emboss the vellum, I'm actually going to emboss the whole panel, and there's a reason for that. So when you emboss vellum, you are going to find that it creates some texture and some shape. So it'll sort of kind of, I'm going to say bubble, sort of distort slightly, which is fine, but it makes it slightly more difficult to glue. So by embossing it together, you're actually going to help create a pretty effect, because you're going to get the embossing on the outer layer as well as the vellum, but also it's going to help force this to stick down. So take your die cut vellum piece and just position that at the top end like so, and I'm using some wet glue because it's visible from the inside, but not for what we want, what we're going to do. Then pop it into your embossing folder, and this is a bit like the inlaid embossing technique, so that's where you do this to create some layers, and this helps kind of really squidge it together really well. So once you've done that, just pop it on your Big Shot. I mean, I'm still using a Big Shot. I haven't got one of the lovely new Stampin' Up machines, because this one works really well. So you're just putting my Big Shot platform, I'm putting a plate below, a plate on top, and then just run that through, and this is me winching in the background, winching as opposed to whinging. I do plenty of that as well. Okay, and there you have a gorgeous embossed panel. So hopefully, can you see? That embossing now covers both my outer layer and my vellum layer. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to score all of our pieces. So I've created 4 of these panels, and what you're going to do is just line up where that bottom corner is, those bottom two points, and just line those up with the track. It's on this 2 centimetre line here, and just score across the bottom of those. It's about 8.5 centimetres along here, I think, but it's just easier to just line those up on the track and create our 4 panels. You're then going to need a piece of 6.5 by 6.5 cardstock. And then the next piece you're going to need, I'm going to create these side panels. So you want a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 centimetres. And then you're going to line it up at 0.9, so this is about 3/8, and score. And then line it up at 1.8, which is 3/4, and cut. And then that's going to give you a piece which you're going to fold, and you need to create 4 of those. So again, at 0.9, that's 3/8 and score, 1.8, 3/4 an inch, and cut. And it's much easier to do that than to try and score down the middle of a skinny bit of card. Believe me, I know. So while we've got my trimmer out, you need a second piece of card for the inside. So this is this piece here that I'm just using to create a shallow tray to sit my my tea light into. So you can see it's got to be a shallow profile because it's just to stop it sliding around. Not essential, but just helps. So if you want to do that, 7.5 by 7.5, and just score at 0.5 centimetre on each of the sides. So again, you know, you'd sort of do this at about 1/4 of an inch, and I will check the dimensions in inches for you. And once you've done that, you also want to score, because you're not going to see it, diagonally across both of those. And the reason for that is just to help centre our punch. So once you've done that, I used a 1.5 inch punch because that was the size of my tea light. So I just popped that. So using the cross that I've just scored, it just gave me a reference point to punch the centre. And because it's a bit of a snug fit, I then just snipped about, say, about 1 centimetre up each of those score lines. And that just gave it a little bit, enough give to fit your tea light in. Because with as it was just a little bit snug. So I'm just cutting my 4 corners out as well. I mean, these embossing folders are a really lovely way to add some dimension to your project. And obviously you've got dry embossing and heat embossing. But this is my my result of the challenge. There we go. So that's a little piece. So as you can see, as I say, 1.5 is just that little bit snug, but by just cutting a little bit, you can see it just gives it a bit of ease, which means you can then just pop that into the bottom of your box later. So let's get on with the construction. Okay, so we've now created our folded piece, but what we want to do is create our long, our actual Lumiere itself. So this is where we've got 4 of these pieces. Now you can use whatever glue you want. You can use New Stampin' Seal Plus, or you could use a wet glue, or you could use well, you know, whichever your preferred glue is. I'm going to try using my Plus actually on this. So all I'm going to do, so these are the ones with little bits of tape. Right, and I'm just going to run that down the 2 sides. It's a little bit tricky because obviously they're slightly wider. So what I'm going to do is attach that, just butt that up to the edge like so. Then take my next one and line that up on the side, and I'm trying to keep that sort of right angle there, and then just press it gently and then make sure that that's kind of lined up. So just a little bit of time on those should help line those up really well. And you're not going to have too much wet glue around. If you get any little bits like that have gone over the edge, if you just use your finger and just fold those back on themselves. They're double-sided, so they're going to work absolutely fine. So, same process again. We're just going to line that up with the edge on the fold, and making sure that I've got my big section at the bottom. Again, just line that up on the fold. There we go. And as I say, I'm just giving that a good press. So my final piece, again, just fold that in half. Again, just pop those, there we go, just on the edge there. Okay, and then my final piece can go like so, and then we're just into the last one, which is probably the sort of kind of, I say, trickiest of all. This new Stampin' Seal Plus is super sticky, so I might change my mind about doing this, but because you kind of don't want it over that centre fold. But we'll see. Let's see how it goes. And then the final one, again, I'm not going to do it flat because I've got to retain that box shape. There we go, but just at the final end. So there we've got our Lumiere. So all I need to do now is just fold in these bottom sections. I probably should have folded those before I actually created my 3D. That would have been perhaps sensible. Now this is where I am going to use my wet glue. And what I'm actually going to do is come in with my with my fingers and just reinforce those, so hopefully they're nice and square. So I'm going to take my 6.5 centimetre square, and I'm actually going to add the glue to these flaps because obviously in the corners you haven't got any glue, any card for it to glue on. Goodness knows how I'm doing on time. I'm probably waffling and suddenly going to have to rush to finish. How are we doing? Oh no, we're good to go. So just pop that in place, and obviously the square just helps you ensure that that's lined up. Flip it on the top, get your fingers down and give that a press into the bottom there. Try again. There we go. Okay, and then I need a slightly smaller square, which I've neglected to cut, which is again 6.5. Well, actually 6.5 by 6.5 is fine. Just for the bottom. Again, just to give it a bit of structure. Now this time you can put plenty of glue onto that. Pop it in on one edge, and what I usually then do is, this is an open one, I wouldn't usually use an open one, pop a can of pop in it. Can of pop, kind of fizzy, you know, I can't think what you call it in the States. And that is our basic Lumiere, and all that you need to do then is just decide to decorate it. And you can see here I've just die cut some snowflakes, which I then added to create a little bit of extra on there as well. Our little frame just pops in, just make sure those are folded in, and I kind of leave that almost have pushed up slightly, just to pop in, and just pop that down into the box, and you can see there it sits perfectly in the middle. So there we have our pretty snowflake Lumiere using an embossing folder on vellum to create a lovely textured look. I hope you've enjoyed the project. If you'd like to purchase our So Many Snowflakes dies or any of the other things you've seen today, please do pop along to my shop at heidismith.stampinup.net, and if you'd like to follow along all the others, have a look in the list underneath this video and click on the links to go and see some other video inspiration on embossing. Thank you for watching me. See you soon. Bye.